I'm Mr. Rosansky, and this is me finally realizing about 60 seconds into the test that I hadn't started my recording, therefore none of this would have gone through. This is officially a speedrun of practice test PSAT, the second module, the B module, the easy one. And we have to make up for all that lost time, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. We skip to 14, skip towards the first conventions question, and that first conventions question is going to be an opportunity for us to check for omega considerations that are not there. So we move on to the next step. For this one, I'm going to check for consistency. This semicolon is popping out at me. I see nothing in the surrounding text. Therefore, I don't do anything to him. I don't murder him. That's in step 2, in equivalence. I then can realize that A is equal to D, and then it's going to be one of these two guys. Let's say you want to go the route of checking for consistency with this comma, making a little bridgey poo here. You can. When Gillespie tested the damage instrument, you would read over this. When Gillespie tested the damage instrument, the sound of a bell bend, you wouldn't like the way that sounds. Now, that doesn't eliminate C. The elimination for C is because you wouldn't want to pause there because a verb preferred needs access to its direct object, and that's the thing to the right. Pick it and move on. We've got another conventions question, conventions. What do we got for this one? We've got the omega consideration for verb that's popping. I've got a both. I've got a both. I've got a singular, and I've got a neither. I'm going to bias this odd man out here, and I'm going to go investigating to see if I like it. While it was under his leadership, the eagle, to become one of the that's disgusting. I realize it's disgusting because this independent clause needs a verb that tells me when. I'm going to extract this when from a shifts in verb tense question. So this is verb tense. I can reanalyze. I've got a future, I've got a past, and I've got a present in C. The clue that I read as I was reading was maps to became. Pick it and move on. I've got another conventions question. I'm going to check my omega considerations, and I see that verb is absolutely popping. I've got a plural, I've got a plural, I've got a plural, and I've got a singular. So I can bias the odd man out, go looking for a subject, easy peasy names. D is going to be the right answer. Conventions question again, omega consideration verb. I've got a plural, I've got a plural, I've got a singular, and I've got a plural. So let's bias the odd man out. Go looking for a subject. It's going to be sculpture. Pick it and move on. Conventions again. Omega consideration. Oh, I was going to get excited and call this the complete sentence mix-up, but while kind of ruins it. Therefore, the omegas falls, consistency falls, equivalence and equivalence, that falls. I don't know why I'm in all caps, so then I'm on the final 4. There isn't a semicolon, but a semicolon equals a period. So let's just check him first. Let's see if we like this as a complete sentence on either side. The short story appears, this period, this feels good. I read the right side, anthology, offend, this is disgusting. It's disgusting because though written as a verb, it's not a verb that tells me when, then this falls. While anthology, I think the next thing to go for is if you plug in the while an anthology of fantasy inside written by, you either wouldn't like it because of the written or the semantics of while. Being concurrent action or contrast makes that fall. And then you could go with like, man, did I pause there? Yes, you paused there. Reason you paused there was that this isn't a positive describing the thing before it non-restrictively, so we need this little comma. I tested by putting a little which is right before it, and I love it. Conventions, omega, verbs. Just kidding. I've been so used to saying verbs that I wanted to say it again, but it's not. Possession. With this possession, I can go kind of anywhere where I want, right? I'm going to go after these novels, though, first, because this novel's possessing an apostrophe is absolutely vomit-inducing. I'm going to kill them both. Now, theoretically, there could be reading over on a bridge and possessing something on the other side of the bridge, because under the bridge isn't the side, but I can't imagine the SAT doing something disgusting like that, so B and D are auto falls. Then, I can consider if Austin's is possessing something or not. But another thing I consider is like, what is the spelling of Austin? A is claiming that Austin is spelled like this, and C is claiming that Austin is spelled like this, or there are clones or a family of them. So I can just go looking in the text. I see Austin is here, Austin to Austin, and I'm going to pick that. I did that a little fast, so I'll cover it here. Now, the most famous novels of Austin can work, but I like all of these little strats coming together. Conventions, again, let's see what we've got for omega considerations. Absolutely nothing. Then we can look for consistency. Consistency, I'm going to go after this semicolon. I don't see any semicolons in the surrounding text, so I can let that fall. We got the consistency. After consistency goes equivalence. There's nothing for that one, so then we're on the final 4. Organic ways to navigate this final 4. I already checked for, or let's keep living in the semicolon. Do I have a complete sentence on the right? Where does it start? Where does it start? When the cold air meets, hold on, delete. When the cold air meets the right, the result, okay, this is a dependent clause. The result is a spectacular lightning storm. It strikes so bright and so period. You could use a period here. So far the semicolon's fine. However, when you read the right side, it's disgusting. This falls. Now, you could go after the colon since you know there's a complete sentence, right? You would check to see if it's an exemplification. It's not. That would eliminate the colon. However, something you might realize is like the reason it's dependent is because of this word here. That is so funky. Since we've just eliminated B, no complete sentence on this right side because of this disgusting that can allow us to autopilot the rule no comma before that. That's pretty sick. Now, you have to do these things in order to auto launch on this, but no comma before that because, well, the way in which it's functioning. It's either a relative pronoun or something funky, right? I don't want to say all the things. It's something funky. That could mean nothing, no comma before that, no nothing before that. A falls, D falls, C is going to be our correct answer. We pick it and move on. Got our transition questions. What do we transition? What do we got on the table here? Tropical forests are humid on the right side, savannas are drier. We have different subjects, different qualities. We're obviously going to be comparing things. On to the next one. Ifa suggested, he provided a suggestion, thick and position it straight above the figure's head. We've got all of this, which seems to be this. I don't know what's significant. It all stands out. Bart, this guy, decided to slim the arm and tilt it out in an angle. So he's going against everything that he said. So instead is going to be our choice for this one. Easy, easy, easy. We've got another transition question. Left side, the soldier's contribution was overlooked for decades. Seems sequency. In 2017, we've got more sequence. They declared the Day of Recognition. This is going to take both of these off the table. Now, lastly, or then, do we have like a series of sequence that we're building towards? 1942, kind of, was constructed in the months largely due to the skilled workers of nearly 4,000 African American soldiers from the Army. It was overlooked for decades. Then, yeah, lastly, we're not building sequence here. We've got this. Then in 2014, this thing happened. We want a quotation from this person to explain that what the sculpture represents. What the sculpture represents. I know from doing so many of these, I had a little coughing fit there, forgive me. I know that from doing so many of these, using a quotation, I'm just going to eliminate any that don't even have quotations. They can get out of my face. Paraphrasing ain't quotation, and that's kind of the first uncomfortable mix-up that they want to get you to fall for. So this ain't had no quotation. B can be fine for now. C dies. Now, we want a quotation from this guy. That's an important mix-up. Sometimes they give you quotes from different people, so be careful there. And I want to know what the sculpture represents. So we can consider what the sculpture represents as our goal. Inspired by the sistrum played by the priestesses, this thing, the italicized thing, sculpture, this is giving me exactly what the sculpture represented. It represents women. D, the sculpture wants her work. This is like a quote that explains the purpose. I'm going to make sure that this is said by this person and I'm not getting bamboozled by something crazy. It's perfectly fine. We want to emphasize the historical significance of this person's enlistment date. So as soon as I see that there are two people, I know that I'm always going to be suspicious of the answer that I pick to make sure that it's not mixing up the dates. But this one's giving us both were sailors of descent, but he was later. I guess that it was later could be significant. A stays on the table. Amos was a sailor of this descent, along with this is a similarity of them both. I can't even cope that this is some sort of goal of my historical significance that I had. Amos enlisted in 1983, making one of the few. This is perfect. This is putting the concept on the platter. All the focus is on Amos, and we're getting his. Why does it matter? He's one of the few sailors of descent. This is minimizing it from him because, like, the first person is doing it first, so we can have a little smoke screen for this. Let's make sure this is a true fact as we're cruising, just to make sure that the cope that I'm presenting isn't pure cope and it's actually fact. Is Amos born in 83, enlisted in 1963? So sees a true statement. When he enlisted, he joined these people. Yeah, this is giving us the achievement on a silver platter. Let's engage with this one. How green backgrounds are used in US and UK road signs. Absolutely. Blue backgrounds, not a good start, are generally used in directional highway signs in the UK. in contrast to the green highway signs. So this doesn't tell me how green's used. You can fall. In the US, green roadway signs indicate directional information on both highways. So this is giving green in the US, but in the UK, directional signs of this color of green generally appear only in roadways. I like this. How are they used here to do this? How are they used here to do this? B is gorgeous. Green road signs are used in both to denote, this is a similarity of them both, are used in both. Wait, to contrast, hold on, similarity. In the US, green signs indicate directional information on both. However, in this, so we've got our contrast, it's true. Let's just make sure this is true because I'm not tripping. In the US, directional signs, highway, roadway, minor in the S are green for direction. Green for directional. Good. UK, directional signs of this color only appear, however, use blue for direction. Major roadways use green. Absolutely. B is true. I love that A is false. Green road signs in the US are both denote. This is a similarity. Sorry about that. This is a similarity. This doesn't talk about the greenness. This doesn't show us the contrast that I'm looking for. Let's head to the first one. To these easy peasy vocab. We've got mingled, so I'm just going to read it now. Love and April and the gold of your hair are all mingled together. I've got like mixed together is the word that I want to supply. Combined matches that. What does the word invent most nearly mean? We're going to read, Sarah not only could tell stories, but she adored telling them. When she sat or stood in the midst of a circle and began to invent wonderful things, her green eyes grew big and shining. When she began to tell wonderful things, she was creating wonderful things. Which choice, both logical and precise word or phrase? Some cities are blank programs to encourage this behavior could kick us back, but we've got two options. We've got the kickback here or the push forward here. Let's push forward. They established reward points and other incentives. Some cities are establishing programs to encourage this behavior. I don't even think I need to go back if I've got a word that I like and none that are too. Instituting matches establishing. Occupying doesn't make sense. Underestimating programs to encourage. No, they aren't underestimating. They're not encountering. They're establishing. This matches. Yeah, so I don't even need to go to the first sentence to know what the this is referring to. Ooh, there are a lot of words in this one, it seems. These plants, what plants are we talking about? These plants, thereby threatening wild rice. Wild rice is threatened. Wait, plants are rice? Hold on a second. People have been growing wild rice known as... Oh, okay. I need to adjust my definition of plants, it seems. As I was reading that, I got climactic changes are causing lakes to get deep. This is an unintended signal element. Plants are extremely something to water depth during the floating leaf stage of development. And if the water is too deep, the buoyancy of the young wild rice plants can literally uproot for them, destroying them. Okay. I had to read a lot for this sentence, but I guess I'm mostly triggered that rice is plant, wild rice plants. I mean, it obviously is, but I would have said grain. Grain is a plant. Man, the more you learn from this SAT, I never stop my journey. So, if the water is too deep, they are sensitive because if the water's, they're so sensitive because they can get hurt. They can get hurt to it. So 4 is B. Let's keep reading. I'm going to summarize this guy. Let's say what this says here. Let's zoom out. 1. A bubble with shell, bubble with shell of water and glycerol is able to draw, gets extra water from the air so that evap don't matter. It's not really so that, but there's like a thereby that I don't want to type. So bubbles with the shell of water, what they're doing is they're getting extra water, thereby stopping the evaporation problem. Or the evaporation problem. Evaporation would be bad. The language to compensate, so compensate a good thing so that it's not a bad thing. It describes the effects of a process devised by researchers, maybe, that increases the longevity. That seems to make sense, but devised by the researchers, I don't know. It details the circumstances that prompted the research discussed in the text. I don't know. I'm going to read a little bit more. I want to know if they created the process or this was a problem that they found. For example, what are we exemplifying? Discovered many ways to mitigate the factors resulting in bubbles that can... Okay, so this is absolutely... They did devise this. We had discovered ways to mitigate. So when I come back to the sentence, so I found those clues, but that allows me to access, is this an effect of the process? Yes, an effect of the process. This gives me the effect of the process. It doesn't detail circumstances. It details circumstances, but the relative clause that prompted, no. This was a result. It presents the phenomena why. It presents a reason why the phenomena discussed in the text. The inevitability to occur, no. There's no there's no way that we're going to inevitably recur, right? This is the conclusion of their studies. It mentions a month and discuss an intended test. We have no idea. This doesn't expressed intended test. They have these as a result of all of their findings. What do we got for this underline? The birds begin by start flying over Alaska 100 m from shore. Okay. This is what they do. It illustrates a change. I don't see any language of change. I just see the word change, but maybe it suggests an explanation for why they breed in Alaska, because they start their journey there. It suggests an explanation for why. Maybe it provides. It doesn't suggest an explanation. That's mad crazy. I got that word start. It describes part of the journey. I really like that. I'm going to see if it's a change in the behavior just by looking around. Generally, it takes forward for the yes. So I know there was no language inside that made me think it was a change. Additionally, there was nothing leading up to this that said here's a change. It doesn't give me a why. It's just where they start. It compares geese to other birds that migrate south for the winter. It doesn't do that. Get those out of my face. What would have been the consequence if he hadn't consequence if he had not started using the sewing machine? So we read with that in mind. Let's go. When fashion designer New opened his store in Scottsdale, he quickly became known for creating delicately crafted leather goods like belts and hats. He was perhaps renowned for his colorful handbags, which he made using long and painstaking process. So it was a long and painstaking process. He gained more customers, so he obviously didn't have enough time. New began using sewing machines and other tools to help create his bags more efficiently. Though he continued to make handcraft crucial details, he wouldn't, made for each one. So what would have been the consequence if he hadn't been using sewing machine? He wouldn't have been efficient in his process. So he would have been unable to ensure that each bag included unique handcrafted details. He would have been unable, no, because he was still able to make each bag unique with his hand. The problem was that he gained more customers, struggling to meet the demand. Yeah, if he didn't use sewing machines, he never could have accessed those new customers by sewing machining the parts of the process that didn't require his delicate, amazing professionalism. On to the next one, on to the next item, he would have had to individually design. I think he designed them. I have no evidence to show that he didn't. No, he already had the growing interest. That was the problem. What does the narrator do as she walks across the stage? One day, the jazz band was invited to perform at the summer festival in Palm Springs. Walking across the stage, I did what my teacher had advised. We're in the spot. As she walks across the stage, pretend you're playing for only one person. What amazing and wise advice. She thinks about the differences between playing the piano alone and playing in a band. No. This is some crazy little phrase. Imagine the room's naked. That's what it's saying. She feels excitement upon playing. She might, but that's not she. That way you won't be so nervous. So she is excited, but what does she do? That's what she feels. She remembers how hard she practices for the performance. That would probably make it worse. She follows the advice about managing. Yeah, imagine that you're playing for just one person. What is one way that Vargas differed from the other ranchera singers? In the 1960s, Vargas became an unlikely star. Okay, most singers had clear, polished voices and performed with a full band. Vargas accompanied her raspy. There we go. That's got to be it. So, how did she differ? She had a raspy voice. Oh, so no, she did not. She did not. They did. She had a raspy voice. We don't have this, so we have to keep reading. Dressed in men's trousers and a poncho, she would perform classic songs that had been written from a male point of view and were usually sung by men. According to the text, what is one way that Vargas did? So Vargas, she avoided singing songs? No. So we don't know if the other people did that, but she certainly didn't avoid. So B falls. She disliked performing classic songs. She would perform classic songs. I don't know if she did or didn't. She altered. I don't know if she did or didn't. I have no evidence to say that she disliked, and I have no evidence to show that she altered. Oh, she also altered those songs. More slowly, she slowed the tempo up. Interesting. So I'm looking for a difference. I don't have anything to support that she disliked it. So it's got to be this one. Pick it and move on. What's the claim? Unimpressed with the house that she is visiting. Her first feeling was that that's bars. In the square lines were a little claimed to be beauty. So it was an ugly house. She was disappointed. Someone had opened the blinds. More light. We have no evidence that she might be a shut-in who hates light, but we don't have that just from that. The door built squarely in the middle of the house opened almost directly from a stone flat lemon straight. We have no instance of unimpressment. She tiptoed through the hall. She's just trying to be secretive. A is the right answer. Data from the table to complete the statement. What's the statement? Consulting the table and finds that this amount is going to kick me back one. The employee wishes, oh, what's my title? Average prices received by U.S. growers from citrus fruits. Okay, fine. Wishes to know how much a grower could expect to receive on average for a box of lemons in July 2021. July 2021, lemons, $31.78. $31.78. We're supporting the hypothesis. What's the then where's to test the hypothesis? Geez, what's the hypothesis doing all the way up here? I found you though. You can't hide from me. You can't hide from the hypothesis. I'll find you wherever you are. All right. So the hypo is fresh water formed by rainfall. That's what fresh water is. Fresh water, fresh rainwater stops sea stars. They stop them. They stop them. But stops them from what? That's their experiment is going to be this way, but stops them from what? I'll read above a little. Scientist Corey noticed that sea stars stayed at lower levels at night. They were at lower levels at night after hovering. Stops. So their hypothesis that fresh rainwater stops sea stars from reaching higher levels. What would support their hypothesis? If the rainwater, if they're not in the higher levels, if they ain't in the higher levels. Okay. None of the sea stars climb to the tops of the tank. True. But sea stars in the tank with only sea. Hold on a second. So we have two tanks. None of the sea stars climb to the top of the tanks, but sea stars in the tank with only sea waters moved around to the bottom of the tank more. No, we're not speaking about mobility. We want none going to the top disproves that rainwater made a difference. Sea stars in the tank with only seawater climb to the top of the tank. Good. Freshwater, but seawater's in the tank with freshwater stop climbing. Absolutely. B's the right answer. Both groups of sea stars climb to the top of the tanks. No. We want there to be a barrier. We should read more. But sea stars in the tank with only seawater climb more slowly. Yeah, no. We don't have, they love that little mix up. We're like rate of speed. We don't have evidence for that. Sea stars in the tank with only seawater stayed near the bottom. Yeah, this would absolutely, D does the best of it, refuting their hypothesis. What am I doing here? Numerous orgs offer same kind for new artists, which suggests. So, I mean, new is the only thing that stands out. Numerous organisms offer the same kind, which suggests. Let's see if we can engage with anything here. We're in the easy section. Artists of all ages benefit more from technical training than from. So the new seems to disagree with this, but I have no idea what. So this is the kind of support. Kind of support equals. So I'm going to define a term here. Kind of support equals tech and creative guidance. Oh, so we immediately get that. We've got another Young matters. So Young is huge in this question, and the AACM, by having established musicians and composers serve as mentors. We've got great technical training and creative guidance. Okay. That so many organizations offer mentorship for young bloods in tech training and creative guidance. That's like exactly what we're dealing with. Artists of all, no, we don't have this comparison. Many arts organizations working the importance of providing opportunities for young artists from, yes, this is, B is the right answer. I shouldn't even want to read a second more. Most established artists, no, this is dropping. Oh, most established artists could become even better artists by serving as mentors. Huh. Kinds of support. This is totally shifting the blame. One We don't even know that they benefit from it. In fact, it could be miserable. We have no evidence to support that. Finding a mentor is more important for musicians than it is for, no, this is parsing things out in an awkward way. This is the logical conclusion. Pick it and move on. It's reasonable to conclude then. I don't know what I've read, so I'm going to engage with this. Start developing what I've got. Cells made with only P. So only P are equal only S. Only P equals only S. However, so we've got something before that it's guiding us to, but let's see if we can engage with the items just from this. The cells with both are more efficient. Oof. So I only have these two on my table. Let's engage with this concept of, is there one with both? In a study addressing this relative inefficiency, a team led by Laura, a thin layer, that the addition of a thin layer, so both equals, which captures the blue light ring, sorry, I was reading that thing under the bridge, allows the cells, so both equal better, only is bad. I guess this relative inefficiency, I'm going to read this first sentence. Cells are, exactly. Only P equals only S, which is bad. Both equals better. The both being better, I don't know about this claim. We'll table him for now. P cells with only P and no S would likely give, no. They they're both trash. Solar power will remain elusive until they're replaced with a more tactical. No, this was like a positive statement about one being better than the other one. There was an improvement to 30. It was a huge improvement. The elusive concept, we have it already. This elusive is crazy. Researchers need to evaluate whether other minerals like P are as effective as P seems to be. It is effective when added. I guess the logic you could reach to would be like, well, if others are, they could keep slathering them on. So before I go for something like that, I'm going to support that in the text, right? I'm looking for detail that's like the more we add, the better it gets, or I'm looking for this concept of more of the color spectrum. Whichever one I can find, I full send on. Addition of the blue, which captures, here we are. This detail, as I make that logical leap in this final part, I can align that with A. D, the more layers, that's like a me thing. I don't know where I'd be getting that. And that's it. That was a pretty fun experience, guys. Thanks for being so patient and cool.